Okay, now we're going to use the method of completing the square to solve quadratic equations. This method is usable for any quadratic equation, and that's the value of it, is that it can be used for anything. Okay, but there are two things that we need to do to a standard quadratic equation before we can actually start completing the square. And the first of those things is we have to separate the variables from the constants. For example, if I have the equation 3x squared minus 6x minus 12 equals 0, this term has a variable in it, this term has a variable in it, this term is a constant. I need to separate them. So I'm going to move the constant over to the other side of the equation by adding 12 to both sides, and I'm going to get 3x squared minus 6x equals 12. The second thing I need to do is divide the equation to get the leading coefficient of x squared equal to 1. I can't begin to complete the square until this coefficient is equal to 1. So I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by 3, and when I do that I'm going to get 3x squared divided by 3 minus 6x divided by 3 equals 12 divided by 3, and that simplifies to x squared minus 2x is equal to 4. Now I can begin to complete the square. And as we learned in the previous segment, the first thing we have to do is take the coefficient of the x term, which in this case is negative 2, and divide it by 2. Okay? Now that's going to equal negative 1. Alright? And we're going to use that. That's what we're going to square in order to add to both sides of the equation. Now in this case we've got x squared minus 2x, and this I'm going to add in negative 1 quantity squared on this side, and over here I've got 4. Now negative 1 squared is really just 1, so I'm going to add it in as a plain old 1 over here. And there's a reason why I'm going to leave it as negative 1 quantity squared here, and that's because the next step is to factor the left side of the equation and write it as a square. And that's where I wanted this to be the negative 1, because I'm going to look at this and say x minus 1 quantity squared is equal to, in this case when I add these together I get 5. Now if I do FOIL on this, I'm going to get x squared minus 2x plus 1. So this is the perfect square of x minus 1 quantity squared. Okay. Now that I've done that, all I have to do is take the square root of both sides and solve for x. So when I take the square root of both sides, I'm going to get x minus 1 on this side equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Don't forget the plus or minus. Now the only thing I have to do is add 1 to both sides. X is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of 5.